Welcome back, folks. We're live from the South Central Regional Conference of the National Association of Electrical Distributors. And we're on the rock here. Greg, hashtag the rock.
Right here.
Go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Light Made Easy started just after World War II.
The Retrofit Kings.
The Retrofit Kings. KeystoneTech.com. We are honored to have Skip Tucker here. Hey, Skip.
Hi.
How's it going?
Finer than frog fur, split four ways.
Oh, frog first, split for you. Now you're just taking me out of it real quick. Tell us a little bit about Spark IQ. What is that?
Sparks IQ is, it used to be called SPA, Strategic Pricing Associates. It was a
So Mark McCready, you're him or
exactly
okay.
yes, and they do analytics
Sure.
with mostly distributors and manufacturers, and they help them set the right pricing. What they found was that while they could have these companies get the right pricing, set the right pricing for their goods, their products, it was very difficult to actually achieve that pricing. So they formed.
It was more like it was more like a good idea rather than a
Great theory.
Yeah.
Great theory, but
Good plan.
it was a great plan, but they didn't really have a way to implement it. And so they needed a way for people to not just set the right price, but get the right price.
Yeah.
And so they formed what at the time was called SPA Sigma, and now it's just all under the umbrella of Sparks IQ. But what this part of the company does is trains. We do sales training, negotiation training, profit training, relationship training, personality training, the whole profit, as I said, the different types of training. My expertise is in the negotiation area.
Because now you don't work for the company?
No, I'm an independent contractor.
You're an independent
I worked for a couple of years with them while we were setting everything up, but now I do it on an as-needed basis, and they bring me in when needed. And I've been doing negotiation training for almost 30 years. So
What's the key to a good
beats
negotiation?
working for a living. I beg your pardon?
What's the key to a good negotiation?
Shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Just shut up.
Shut up.
Shut up.
No, I've had people ask me that before, and that's probably the biggest one, is that people talk too much.
Yeah.
And when you're talking, you're not listening. And if one of the things that we try and get across in every negotiation is that you've got more power than you think you do. In any negotiation you ever get involved in, you've got more power than you think you do. Why? Because you're dealing with somebody that's got a bunch of pressures on them to close the deal. And in every negotiation you ever get involved in, there's always pressures on the other side. But we don't think about those because we're too busy and concerned with our own pressures. And so if you shut up and listen, a lot of times people will tell you what their pressures are. So if I were to give anybody one bit of advice to be a better negotiator, don't talk so much.
Yeah.
Listen a whole lot more. There's other ones, but they pay me for giving that information.
Can you handle that, Michael?
I'm just listening.
There you go.
And also, too, we talk about the importance of silence in a negotiation. Most of us are very uncomfortable when it gets quiet. We want to fill the void of silence with noise.
Mm-hmm.
We turn the radio on, turn the television on. If somebody doesn't say anything, we do. And that's great at a negotiation, because if you stop talking, you're almost forcing the other person to start talking. And when they start talking, they start giving you information. So be quiet. You're also not making a bunch of stupid remarks and giving away too much information yourself.
Yeah.
So I've done over probably 500 or 700 podcasts. I don't know how many now.
Yeah.
Okay. And
kind of runs together after a while, does it?
Yeah, like I don't, like, people will come up to me and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, then they'll be talking about some show I did," and I'll be like, I'll look at them and they'll be like, people will come up to you, like a show like this. We all go to the airport at the same time, so I'll be in the line at the airport and somebody, "Hey, are you the Circadian Canadian?" Right? I'm like, "Oh yeah, for sure." It's honoring. Like, to me, it's crazy, right?
Sure. It's cool.
So someone can like shake hands or whatever, and they're like, "Oh man, you mind when you did that and you said this?" I'm like, I have no recollection of what they're talking about.
None whatsoever. Yep.
Yeah. So, but you know what's interesting is like one of the things, the power of listening. People love to talk about themselves.
Boy, howdy. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, they love it, and everybody loves it. You want to charm somebody, you want to seduce somebody, whatever it is that you want to do with someone, get them to talk about themselves.
The other thing is that most people aren't very good listeners. Most people, to them, listening means
It's a chore.
waiting for their turn to talk.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Or at the very best, formulating what they're going to say based on what the other person's saying. Right. They're not actively listening to the other person. I mean, I've asked people before, how many of you know 5 exceptional listeners? Rarely. Most of us are lucky if we know 1 or 2 people who really are good listeners. You become a good listener, man, that opens up all sorts of doors for you.
I'll tell you, man, being able to shut up and listen is a powerful skill to learn. One of the things that I try to do when I'm talking, so I do a life show where I talk to just people about anything. Okay. I try to find their talk switch. Like everybody has like something they'll want to talk about. And if you flick that switch on them, the conversation, like sometimes in a podcast, I'll look at have you ever produced an audio?
Oh yeah,
thing?
I was in radio.
So
for a
you
long
see
time.
you see like the digital channel, right? There's my channel, your channel, and Greg's channel.
Mhm.
And I'll do these podcasts with people, and at the end of them, they'll be like, "That was so awesome and wonderful, and what a great conversation." And it'll be like 90% they talked.
Oh yeah, they think you're a wonderful conversationalist, even though they dominated the time. Absolutely.
I don't know if they dominated. It's that a lot of people just never been listened to before, or had their ideas unpacked by somebody.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of tragic in a way that we can't do that. I think we're becoming less able to do that, Skip.
I agree, and yet it makes it that much more important that we become active listeners, and that's something that anybody can do. But it takes practice paying attention to what somebody's saying, not being not playing around on your phone, being distracted by other things. You got to know what they're talking about, be able to paraphrase back to them. And the key to these, and I've done seminars in active listening, is don't give advice unless they ask for it.
That's wonderful advice.
Yeah. Don't give them any advice.
I didn't ask for it.
Most people think that when they are talking to you about something, they want to hear what you have to say about it. And nothing could be further from the truth.
True. In fact, it's funny because, in fact, what do they call for it? Unasked for advice or suggestions.
Unsolicited, yeah.
Unsolicited advice is actually resented by most people.
A lot of times. Yep.
It's like, I don't care what you're telling me to do. You know, most people just want empathy. They don't want sympathy. You know, they just want you to say, you know, I call it the anecdote of the teach a man to fish, give a man a fish anecdote.
Sure.
We've all heard that, right?
Of course.
That's actually incomplete. Okay. So, you know, the man with no fish is a problem. So what do you do with him? Well, you can give him a fish. You can teach him to fish. Or you can just say, hey, it sucks to have no fish. I hated it when I didn't have any fish.
That's terrible. Yeah?
Are you going to the game this weekend? Right. There's another option. There's a do nothing and let people solve their own problems option to that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's empathy. That's what empathy is.
If you're asking for his advice.
No, it wasn't. That's fine.
So you did a 3-hour.
Come on.
3-hour.
2
workshop
3-hour
today.
workshops. Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
On strategic negotiation.
Yep.
Holy buckets. That's a lot. That's a big day, man.
Piece cake. No, I've been doing it a long time.
Okay.
Eyes closed. It's
Really?
it's one of those things and I have to. I've done full 2-day programs before, sick as a dog and just completely on autopilot. That's not the best way to do it, you know, but if push comes to shove, I can. But it's fun. I enjoy it. It's as I said earlier, and I was kidding around kind of, but it beats working for a living. If I didn't do this, I'd have to have a job, for crying out loud.
What do people take home from your session that you did, your workshop? What is it going?
Probably the biggest one is what I said earlier about the fact that there's always pressure on the other side.
Yeah.
That's a real epiphany moment, and that's actually a great feeling when you're presenting that and you say, look, there's always pressure on the other side, and you see the lights come on in the room. That's a great feeling for a speaker.
Yeah.
And I've had people come up to me years later and tell me, you're talking about how people recognize you in the airport. That's happened to me.
It doesn't happen that much. Okay.
It has happened.
It's happened 3 times.
Yeah. Well, but still, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, aren't you Skip Tucker? Yeah, I am. Well, I took your seminar in Paducah, Kentucky,
Sure.
15 years ago. Do you remember me? Sure,
yeah.
but I really
But it's an
remember
honor.
this.
It's an honor.
It
man.
is,
Yeah.
it is, and it's an ego stroke too. It's
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it makes me feel good, but also what is really cool is they remember usually one or two things. If they can remember one or two, three things, that's great. That's awesome.
Sure.
After that period of time and it's impacted them, boy, that's a great feeling for me.
You know, it's interesting to sit back and in a negotiation or when the pressure is on. So I've actually, so I'm a person of interest to the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Agency.
I can
Okay.
understand that.
Well, you crossing the border with this without a visa, not easy.
Yeah.
So you have to negotiate.
Sure.
Okay. And so now a lot of people don't, it's not into situations like that where you realize that there's a massive difference between human rights and citizens' rights. So as a Canadian, I have human rights in the United States.
Mhm.
I don't have citizens' rights. So when you're negotiating with these people, there's no right to a lawyer. There's none of the rights that you would think about American has that you just think is normal for an everyday person to have. Like, we care about your reasons. No, we don't.
Mhm.
Right? So you get into situations where someone asks you, like, sir, do you want to voluntarily leave the United States, or am I going to deport you? Oh, I'm going to voluntarily leave the United States. No problem with that, right?
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you get into those situations where you're like, oh my God, I have no rights here. Right? Like there's nothing I can say. They don't care. They can just decide, and they don't need any burden of proof. They don't need any reasons. So you have to negotiate with these people.
Mhm.
Right? And one of the things that is interesting is that the less you say, the less you speak, the more likely you are to be admitted into the United States. The more you're talking, the less likely you are to be admitted. It's interesting because when you were telling me that, listen, it's like that's exactly what you have to do when you're standing in front of a border patrol agent, is say as little as possible to him.
You don't have as much of an opportunity to say something stupid.
Exactly.
And that's very important. But that's true in business as well. Just shut up, listen a little bit more rather than talking. You don't have as much of an opportunity to put your foot in your mouth.
Mhm.
So absolutely, I can understand how that would be true.
You know, it's funny. It's like you could take the other thing. So the listening point is such a massive thing for people to learn. It's almost like they should teach it to kids in high school. It's like, let's do grade 10 is listening course. So we're going to sit down and we're going to practice listening. Seriously, I think they should be taught to kids. The other thing about the pressure on the counterparties. So you're in a negotiation, your counterparty has pressure too, right? That's what you're pointing out. And you don't really think about it that way. When you're trying to sell somebody something, you don't think about that they have to convert their facility to LED, like you say.
Mhm.
Right? There's pressure on them to act too.
Mhm.
Right? And when we sit down and we think to ourselves, instead of thinking about the stresses and that, just let's put ourselves in the other. It's a cliche, but it's so true.
There's a reason they're talking to you.
Yes.
When you're in a negotiation, there's a reason that they've taken the time out of their day, their busy day, to talk to you. People will only speak with you in a negotiation if one of two conditions are met. Either you've got something that they want or need, or they're lonely and they don't have anybody else to talk to. And that's about it.
So that explains this.
I wasn't going to go that far, but okay. Yeah, and most people don't understand that. You think, even if you go into a negotiation, you feel that they've got all the cards.
Sure.
And I find that all the time. People say, well, I'm negotiating with so-and-so, and this big, huge company, and I'm this little, they've got all the cards. There's a reason they're talking to you. There's a reason they're talking to you. Keep that in mind. You've got more power than you think. In every negotiation, you've got more power than you think. That and shut up.
Wow. So that's a live stream right there, Skip Tucker. So you're sitting on the rock right now, which is Keystone Technologies. This is brought to you by them. And we'd like to thank them, Josh Brown and Fred and Ira and the crew over there at KEYSTONETECH.com. Greg, KeystoneTech.com. I like it easy. Come on. Thank you for listening, all you folks out there sticking with us on this day today. I think that's the 9th one today.
That's a lot. One more to go.
One more to go. Thanks for listening.